Hey, Martin. Martin? Are you there? Are you there?
Just kidding, Bret. This internet has been so flaky recently. My home internet is just not like the office internet.
Oh, I agree. And actually, one of our customers, one of our clients, Clever Goldfish Marketing, they emailed and they said, hey, we're working from home a lot. Our internet is slow. Do you have some tips for building serverless apps while developing locally? And I thought, yeah, let's show them how to tips and tricks.
Yeah, I would love to do this and actually, to be perfectly honest, learn some from you, Bret, here. But because you know me, I treat my computer like a glorified text editor. I upload my code to the cloud, I compile it up there, run it up there, I have my test environment, everything up there. But it is kind of awkward when working from home. I really want to be able to test locally and do things faster that way.
Cool, yeah. So let's dive in and take a look.
Yeah. Yeah, so Clever Goldfish, marketing agency, right? They are a Node shop as well. The developers are familiar with Node.
Node.js.
Yeah. So I guess we should set up an app. Or are we going to talk about what we're testing locally first, perhaps?
Yeah, so I thought a good way to show this off is we will start, all on the laptop, just working locally with an API app, and then show maybe one of the common problems, so just sort of how do you debug that locally and walk through that. And then one of the common struggles, I think, is what if you have an app that needs to talk to something in the clouds that you can't run on your laptop? Can you still debug? Can you still use all the tools and IDEs and debuggers that you're used to? So we should show that. Yep.
Right. Sorry.
Go ahead. Then I was just going to say, yeah. And then I think the next step will show, all right, how do you run a local database? Kind of how you might normally do that anyway, have it connect using the same app. And then kind of the next step would be, well, what if you need to talk to a database in the cloud? Something that's not on your workstation. What does that look like? How do you have to change your app and so forth? And then finally, for the big reveal, we'll just run everything in the cloud. So this will actually be deploying up to a test environment or a dev or a staging environment. So it's all of our laptop and all up and running in the cloud.
Cool. So this last piece, this is how I usually do it. But yeah, let's pull something. It's awkward when working from home. So yeah, let's pull some stuff down to our laptop here.
Cool. All right, let's get coding.
Coding time, my favorite time. All right, so they are Clever Goldfish in the marketing agency. They know Node, I hear. So how about we set up a Node app for them?
Yeah, sounds good. So what we can do is build a skeleton of a Node app, just using Node.js and Express, which is the web framework for Node.js. So if we run...
Oh, sorry, I was in the wrong.
Okay.
I ran Node in it, npm init, but in the wrong bash window. Sorry.
Okay, maybe.
Maybe you can show the. Should we meet in bash 1?
Okay, yeah, that'll work.
I'm sorry. Maybe you can show a package.json.
Yes, all right. And actually, so just to kind of tell you guys what everyone watching at home, what we're using is Visual Studio has this tool to do pair programming remotely. So this might also be a way you can work with other people locally on your workstation in your familiar editor like VS Code. And so here we're sharing an environment. All right. Oh, did that have an error there? Oh, npm install Express.
Yeah. Oh.
So here we've got our package.json, which Martin set up in the other window, which has metadata about our application. And one of those is how do you start the app? So I'll fill this in. So npm start. We don't do testing thing right now. And then it also has things like dependencies. So Martin just installed this Express module to do HTTP traffic in our app. And the way you start it here is index.js. So probably we should create that, huh?
Probably, yeah. That'd be great. All right, so let's see. I am trying to get to that file. Sorry.
It's not loading. There we
Okay,
go.
there.
I see your
Now
little
I'm in the
cursor in
right
there
place.
now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Martin's just going to import the Express module to let us do HTTP traffic and then create an instance of it. There are two things you need to do to get your app running in Cloud Run in the cloud, which is what we'll end up doing by the end of this video. The first, so one of them is you have to put your app into a container, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And then the second is you need to listen for traffic on the port environment variable. So fairly straightforward process here. We just say, hey, if the port environment variable is set, use it. And if not, then run it on 8080. So that way, if we run it on our laptop or some other environment, the port is not set, then it'll listen to 8080 default. But Cloud Run will actually set that port environment variable to be whatever it needs to do to run in Cloud Run. And then we'll listen. Oops. And then I see got a little autocomplete.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, there we go.
That happens every time. I need to tame the settings here. It would be great if the text editor was less aggressively
It's so helpful. It stops being helpful. Yeah.
It is a great editor, though.
And then now Martin is going to set up there we go.
There we go.
An endpoint.
You're my autocorrect, Bret. I love it. Thank you.
So we'll do an HTTP get at /hello, and then just have this is normal Express code, a request object, and request will have all of the values coming in from the user. So if it's JSON in the body or a query string parameter or something like that, and then the response, this res, what we send back to the user. So, status code 200 or 500 or 404 or whatever, and then whatever values we want to send back to the user. And we're going to do something that will have an endpoint that looks like, hello, and then we'll say name equals, me. And then, so we'll get the value here, and then create the string hello such and such, and then we'll send it back to the user. What?
Oh my gosh.
That's funny.
This is running
Well,
amok.
we're doing pair programming, so I'll keep an eye out for autocomplete errors.
Yeah, name equal. Oh, right. Yep. So we'll have in the query string there, we'll ask for the name, spit it back. So usually there would be more code in here, but let's just try sort of a hello world here, run it locally, debug it, just show how that works.
All right, so we'll run locally. I'll run npm start. Oh. What have we got? It's port of undefined.
What?
env.
What? Oh, again, it's yeah.
I think again, the maybe too helpful autocomplete.
Yeah, we need to dial it back just a little bit. Okay, REST API listening on port 8080. Good. So we are now the code up there on line 6. This console log up here is now running. So we started listening to it. That's great. Now, how do we get to run the code down here? Let's do
a curl here in another window. So I'll do localhost 8080 hello name equals, and I'll say hello to myself.
Hello to yourself.
It's taking a little bit of time. That's not a great.
That's not complicated code. It shouldn't take this long.
So let's go over to our node web server and see where our error is.
Yeah.
Looks like.
Oh, I see exceptions. Yeah. Exceptions everywhere.
Property name of undefined.
This sounds like a job for the debugger.
Yes, and since we're running locally and the tools and IDs and everything that we're used to, like we could just do normal debugging. So I'll just set a breakpoint there and let's see what we got here. Run and debug.
Yeah, and I killed the process that was running on 8080.
Good.
So now that you're running the debugger, so you clicked run the debugger. That means it is running. It's running this listening to 8080 in the debugger now.
Yep. So now let me go back and run that curl again so we can check out. I'll say Martin.
All right, very good. So, we hit the breakpoint.
Very satisfying. Body undefined.
Body undefined.
So let's actually look into this request object.
So where is because you did send the name in the URL. Where is
and we see it there, so it's getting it.
Oh, okay. Original URL. Very good.
And then, here it is. It's in the query object, not the body object.
Oh, I guess it's body. If it had been a post, it would be body request. But now it is not post, it's a get. So
yeah, we'll do query.
Request. Oh, query.
And let's try that again.
That would have taken, I mean, we could have fixed it without the debugger, but it would have taken.
Yeah, and if it was something more complicated, it's harder to do. Like if you have to rebuild your app and maybe deploy it every time. So let's try this and see how it goes. Hello, everybody. Yay, cool.
Everybody. Oh, look at that.
Whoops. All right, handy. Cool.
Yeah, I love that debugger.
All right, so that's pretty standard way of writing and running your code locally, which is kind of the point, right? We're going to build an app that's going to deploy to Cloud Run, and kind of the point is build it locally if that's what you're used to, and using all the same tools. There's nothing magic about Google Cloud Run or Google Cloud in this. But what about the next piece, Martin?
Yeah, let's. Actually, Bret, would you mind pulling up the slide of the boxes? And which, yeah, right. So here we before we ran our app only on the laptop, we had nothing to do with the cloud. But sometimes we need to hit resources in the cloud from our laptop, things that it's not realistic to pull down on your local laptop. For example, let's say Clever Goldfish wants to hit Google's translation API. It's not realistic to pull down Google's the huge models that deal with 20 languages and all of that. We want to call that translation API in the cloud from our local laptop. So by doing that, we can still run the debugger on our local app. It's just when we call that API, we call out into the cloud.
All right.
Yeah.
So you said translation API, so maybe we should...
Translation API. Yeah. Do you want to type for a bit? I did a lousy job of typing the first one.
Yeah, totally. So first thing we probably need to do is I will come down here and install the translation.
Okay, cool. So so all these Google APIs, you can laboriously put together the REST request yourself and send it, or you can use a client library. It's far easier to use a client library. So here, Bret just installed the client library for the translation API. So it'll be a one-liner to call the translation API. And here we're just setting the project to Clever Goldfish test. So Clever Goldfish, they have like a production account, a GCP account, Clever Goldfish -prod, and they have Clever Goldfish -test, which is the one we're going to run against now.
And I was going to say, I think that's a good pattern to follow, is using projects to keep your resources separate. You could sort of have dev and staging and QA all in the same Google Cloud project, but I think it gets too easy to sort of mix up what goes to where. So projects is a nice way to kind of have that separation.
Yeah, right. Cool. So we've now installed the Translate client library, and now we need to import it into our code so we can call it. So we'll pull in version 2 of the Translate API, and then when this code runs, we'll create a Translate client. So this is client. It has various methods on it. When you call one of those methods, in the background or under the covers, one of those REST calls is assembled and sent up to Google's translation API. So we'll just have the endpoint /translate, and when you hit that one, /translate/ and then a language code, when you hit that, we're going to hit the app here is going to hit the translation API. It's going to send hello world, the string hello world, to the translation API, ask the translation API to translate this to the language that the user entered in the URL. So for example, /translate/FR, that's the language code for French. So then we expect to get French back. And then there on line 20, we just do send back the result. So we get a bunch of results back in this result object. The 0th element, that is the translated text. Then there are others like the how confident we are in the translation, that sort of thing. Cool. So this was not too much code. Very nice.
What do you think? Should we try running it? See what it does?
Try it? Yeah.
Start it here in this window, and then
So listening on 8080. Okay, that's good.
Oops. Didn't do 8080.
Yes, that 8080.
So let's say.
So we should get back in French.
Ooh.
We should have got back into French.
Taking its time. Also not.
I mean, it would take a little longer because it hits the cloud, but not
this
more
long.
than a second or two.
Let's see
Yeah,
what our error
something's
is.
awry.
So we've got
Exceptions.
your application has authenticated, not supported. Authentication error.
Authentication. Well, actually, this is kind of nice, isn't it? We're running here. This is just a random app on the internet trying to hit our translation API quota, getting in on using up our translation API calls, getting on our bill. We don't want that. We want to make sure it's an authorized application that sends these.
Yeah, and actually to go back
right?
to this diagram, so this is my laptop talking to our cloud project, but it could literally at this point be anyone's laptop talking to it. As far as cloud knows, Google Cloud, like it doesn't know who our app is. So we need some way to create an identity for our application so that our application actually has an identity that cloud can say, oh, I know who you are. So when I run commands as myself, Google Cloud knows who I am. When you, Martin, run commands as yourself, it knows who you are. But how does it know who our app is? We need to create some kind of identity for that.
Right. Exactly. So they are like personal identities, like Bret and Martin, we have personal identities, but code runs as another kind of identity. And in Google Cloud Platform, these are called service accounts.
Service account.
Look, there it is. I always get confused about where service account is, and I have to search in the menu. So here, Bret is creating a new service account, Goldfish API. We can call it whatever we want.
But I would point out, it's a best practice to create a service account for each sort of service that you have. So we're going to have a Cloud Run service that we're building here. So rather than creating, maybe one account for everything, in general, it's a good idea to create a separate service account for every service that you're going to run.
Yeah. So this service account that we want our code to run as, we wanted to, this Goldfish API account, we wanted to only have the role Cloud Translation API user. So it doesn't, it's not allowed to hit the database, any of the databases in the account. It's not allowed to delete stuff, other things. It's literally only allowed to do this. So you can set up the way you, multiple roles in one account if you want to. But here we have a really stripped down account. So that can do minimal damage. And JSON file. So here we'll actually download a key file here, that the private key for this. So you now have the private key on your laptop, Bret. With great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. This service account file is essentially a password to your Google Cloud project. So don't check this into source control. Make sure you don't leave it laying around where other people digitally can see it, because if you have access to this JSON file, you will be able to do whatever this app can do. And in this case, it's just called the translation API. But who knows what your app, what permissions you give it, and so protect this file.
Yeah, and when we're running up in the cloud, we don't really need this key file, right?
Oh, that's a great point. So when your app is running in Google Cloud, in Cloud Run, for example, Cloud Run will take care of setting that identity for you. So you don't have to download this JSON file. And we're just doing that so that we can run it from our laptop when we're developing locally. Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, what's this? G-read link?
So, I was trying to figure out a way you can output it's literally just to get the path of this file. So if you give it like something here, it'll return the entire path. And the reason I need to do that is because I wanted to keep, notice this is in my downloads directory. I just to avoid accidentally checking it in, I don't even really want to put that key file here. I don't even want to put it in this source code directory. So I'm going to put it in a completely separate directory so I don't accidentally check it in. But we've got to tell, when we're making these calls locally, so we're calling the translation API, we need to tell the client library is like, hey, what is the identity? And so we can do that with something called Google application credentials, which I will use with that full path there.
So you're just setting an environment variable here. That's all? Do we need to change the code at all?
Nope. So by default, all of the Google Cloud and Google API client libraries, they know to check this. And if that is set, then they'll go look at that, and then they'll make every call as that user and as that identity. So.
Oh, that's cool. So we can have the same code run on your local laptop or up in the cloud or on some CI/CD or test server, and it'll be the same code everywhere. It'll just have different values of this application credentials variable.
Yeah, which is really nice. Yeah, like you said, so you don't have to change the code. It gets set from the environment. So, all right, let's try this again. Yeah. What do you think? Ooh. Oh, wait, you know what? I think I know what it was. I think that I need to export this because when I'm running as node, as a child process, so I don't think it was picking that up. Let's try that. Aha.
Bonjour,
all right, your French is great. I only speak a little bit of Spanish, so let's see what this is. Hola, mundo. That one I know.
Oh, that looks correct,
what
right?
else you got?
Oh, let's try my native Swedish, SV. Hey, well
all
done.
Right, I'm going to trust you that one's right. What else?
Yeah.
So something with another character set, maybe?
Oh, yeah, ZH. Yeah, Chinese. Let's do it.
Ooh. I know Japanese is also one. I think it's JA. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Arabic, AR.
How's your Arabic? Does that look right?
Yeah, does it look right to you? Maybe.
All right. If you're watching and you speak Arabic,
it's a little rusty.
Yeah, let us know if that's right.
Yeah. Oh, very cool. So now we have our local application running on Bret's laptop here. We can put breakpoints in it. But we can also hit stuff in the cloud when we do need to reach out to. And these are things like, what might be some APIs we want to reach out to? Translation API?
There's a vision API. There's also services like a natural language API. There's also services like cloud storage or cloud pub sub that it don't really make sense to run on your laptop.
Right. So all of that we can now hit from our local machine with this key file trick. And also, of course, this is useful. This key file thing is useful when we're running and debugging and developing here on our laptops. This is something we might want to set up if we have a CI/CD server or a test server that doesn't run in the Google Cloud, but still needs to interact with our things in the GCP project.
Oh yeah, cool. Makes total sense. So those are things you aren't realistic to run locally. One thing that you might be running locally is a database. So if we go back to this, let's add a Postgres database locally that our app can talk to. And I've already installed it and set it up, so I'm not going to walk through that part. But just to prove to you that I have one locally, we have a database called marketing. And so this has all of the clients for our clever goldfish marketing company that we're building this for. And so Snip Snap Warehouse. If you've watched,
I've heard that name before.
If you've watched some Serverless Toolbox episodes, you may recognize some of these names. Cool. So that's our local database that we want to connect to.
So they have 9 clients. I see. I don't know. Is that a lot or a little?
I guess it depends how big those clients are. Yeah, maybe probably not. It's probably not a great sign to only have 9 clients, but got to start somewhere.
Maybe they're just getting started. Yeah.
Cool.
So we're gonna hit that API. So I guess we'll have a new API endpoint.
Yeah.
Is that the plan here to pull out clients?
Yep. So let me install this Postgres npm package. So PG is for Postgres npm package, and then npm install. I don't know if it's Knex or Knex, but we learned this from our colleagues on developer relations at Google Cloud. It's kind of a handy SQL builder tool, so you don't have to write, select blah, blah, blah from blah, blah, blah as a big string. You can kind of build it in code. So hopefully that goes there.
That library is so handy. And yeah, we only learned about it the other day.
Yeah,
right?
Just a couple of days ago. And it supports, from what we saw anyway, it supports MySQL and Postgres. So pretty useful.
Yeah. I'm going to use that library
sure.
from now on.
So Martin's setting up this endpoint here where we'll say /clients, and then so / you saw from the database. So if I did /2, it would go to the database, run that query locally, and then return back some object to so that we can see what clients we have for Clever Goldfish marketing.
Yeah.
So we'll get the ID from the URL here, and then return it as a JSON object. And then this get client, that's where all the magic will happen. So we'll we'll have someone come in and write that. Our intern will take care of that later. And then so set the status code, kind of metadata to the data, so that we know this is correct. And in theory, if there was an error, you would set this to error or something instead, and then return the object back in data. So
yeah. Not a lot of robust error handling here, I'm afraid. But my keyboard is set up a little awkwardly here, Bret. Would you mind taking care of
yeah,
okay.
Client? I see how it is. The thing that does all the hard work. No, totally. So I will write this async function called function called get client.
This is the time to shine for the Knex, whatever you call it, library. The SQL builder here, it's really nice. You see here with just a few methods that are really easy to understand what they do. This one builds up a safe SQL string that is safe from SQL injection attacks and things like that.
And it supports natively async await, which if you don't know, in Node is just a nice way to express asynchronous operations in a way that you don't have to do a bunch of callbacks and things like that. But we actually we're not actually contacting this database, so let's actually import it.
Oh, right. Yeah, so you're using the Knex variable here. So I guess we need to set that up and tell the library which database to connect to.
Yeah, let's do that. So I'll say...
Yeah. So when our code starts here, this will be connect here will be a global function. It will run when this whole thing is initialized, even before any of the REST endpoints are called. And here we're setting up the configuration for the database. So I notice here you're not entering the username itself or the password itself, Bret.
Yeah. And well, like you were talking about the identity, that JSON identity file, you want to be able to deploy it to Cloud Run or to your local computer or wherever, and not actually hard code the identity in the app. Same thing here. We're just going to put these as environment variables. So Cloud Run has the ability to set environment variables. We can set environment variables locally, and then that way it's not actually in the code of the app.
Yeah. So we don't accidentally check in our passwords, and also so that our code can run in multiple environments. Very nice. Okay, so then we need to tell the library that it's a Postgres database that we're connecting to, and then we return this Knex, this configured connection object, and this is the one that we actually declare here as a global variable. And global variables are, we've all been taught in school that global variables aren't good practice, but when you're doing serverless programming, they actually come in handy, because now the first time this code is loaded up on a new server for us by Google, Knex will become this global variable that we can then use down in get client. And then if Google decides to reuse the instance that is created with our code later for different requests from a client, then this variable has already been set up, the database connection is already there, so it'll go faster.
Yeah, well said. All right, so what do you say? Let's connect to the local database. So first we'll need to set these. Yeah. So I'm going to do export user equals.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, so process.env, that is Node's way of asking for environment variables. And so what Bret is doing here is just setting values for those environment variables. So then the code will read from those.
All right, cool. So
localhost is the host. Nice.
So if we do a curl then on this endpoint, where is it? This endpoint, then we should get back some
Yeah.
client.
Let's see.
Oh, oops, clients.
Clients, yeah.
Uh-oh, what? That's interesting. Is there a typo?
What might that be?
Select star from client. Oh, I think I said client.
Oh, should it be
Clients.
clients?
Aha. All right, well, this is how you know it's real.
Yeah. That was actually a good error message. We didn't even need
Debugger, yeah.
for
But
that.
since we're running locally, we actually could debug it. Oh no, do we have another error?
Maybe we will
I
need
know.
to after all.
Res.json.
Res.json.
Oh man,
Did it autocorrect
to all caps. That's all right. We'll and I missed it. I was your pair programming partner. Okay, I'll try this again.
Yes. I mistyped it. You missed it. Yeah. Maybe we need a
Yeah,
third
right.
person.
Oh, there we go.
Spread.
I got it.
Oh, look
Pet
at that. The JSON came back. So, pet theory, veterinary clinic. Okay. Neither our care nor our prices are
That's
rough.
funny. Whoops, the wrong
Okay.
hour. That's we need to have there. People go and look at.
Something tells me the translation API will have a hard time translating this slogan
Right.
accurately to other languages.
Yeah, photo fish, go fishing for great photos. So cool. Yeah, so
Perfect.
that's working, and that's
Yeah.
hitting our local database. So that's good.
Everything
Yep.
is local. This is great.
And what's nice is nothing is hard coded to be local. So we want to take that now. Let me go back to the slides. We want to take this database and instead we want to connect to a database in the cloud. And this for a few reasons. One, maybe you have some larger data set that's running in Cloud SQL that you don't want to put on your local machine, or there's just some problem that seems to only manifest itself in when it's pointing to the database in Google Cloud, but you still want to be able to step through locally and debug it. Or maybe you just don't have SQL installed locally, so you want to just have it set up in the cloud and point to that. So let's see what that looks like.
Yeah.
All right. So actually, first thing I'm going to do.
So for this-
is service. I'm actually going to stop the local one.
Yes.
And this way we
So
can
that
prove
we
it
don't
to you.
accidentally
Can
hit
prove that it is actually not talking to the local database. So now if I say, try to connect to that, it'll say, yep. So local database is turned off.
Oh, okay. Very good. We can prove that it works. Great. Now, let's see. Is this the part where we need to do SQL admin?
Yeah. So let me go to the database. So there's a couple of things you need to do. One, so we already talked about identity, is like how do you set the identity of the app so that it has permissions to do different things. But Cloud SQL has something in addition to permissions. You also need to set connectivity. So even though the user, our app's user, has the right has permissions to do reads and writes and updates and all of that to the database, it can't see it, and that's by design, by default. You just, it's not even available publicly on the internet, and you can't even see the database. So there's a tool called Cloud SQL Proxy, which I'll just go to the docs to show you. So we'll go Postgres.
I know I would sleep a lot better at night knowing my database is not publicly accessible on the internet.
So there's two things you need to do. One is you need to enable the Cloud SQL admin API. So this is not the Cloud SQL API, it's the admin API. And you just have to turn it on, which we've already done in this project. And then you download this little tool. I'm running on Mac, so I'll download this one. That it just runs on your laptop, and so it will, in this case, it'll actually be connecting as me, like as Bret, my personal user, which has permissions to run to talk to the database. So let me download this.
So let's see, you're downloading the little proxy program, okay?
Make it executable.
And you're setting the proxy, that little program, so that you have the right to execute, to run it.
And so here's how we actually start it. So let me copy that, and I'll put it in this. So we need to get this instance connection name, which is kind of a weird format. But luckily, if you go to the Cloud SQL overview page, which is just here, it has it in a handy little.
Right. And it's kind of long, but if you look at it, it is the project name, what region our project is running at, our instance name of the the
Yep,
database.
exactly right.
And then our port, I guess.
All right, so let me actually run this. And ready for new connections.
So listening, ready for new connections. Cool. Very good.
So we said that we don't need to change any of the code, so that's promising. But what we will need to do is change the credentials. So we had a certain username, password, database name, and host. So this is localhost, and so if we take a look in here, let me stop the app. Yep. So in this case, I think we should still be able to connect to localhost since it's talking to the proxy, which is running in localhost. But again, to prove to you that this is running on the cloud user, which is a good practice, has a different password than the local database user. So let me grab that.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, your local database password was not super secure.
Serverless Toolbox. But
there it is.
In the cloud. So let's.
Oh, the one in the cloud looks so much better.
So actually, we not only do we not have to change any code, we actually didn't have to change much. But you may have completely different username and password and database name in your cloud database. All right. Moment of truth. Localhost.
Yeah. Let's see. So we're running our code locally, but it should hit the database in the cloud. Look at that. It worked.
My name listener.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Listener. Does listener, do they have a slogan?
I think it maybe got cut off there.
Oh, got
just
cut
in the
off.
terminal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Come sail on the ship of artisanship.
Artisanship. Yeah.
Sounds good. I'm sold.
All right, cool. So now that is us talking to a database in the cloud. So now what's the final step here?
And yeah, just on the previous step here, so the reason to run for this like this is that we have a database in the cloud, but we can still set breakpoints and do all that good debugging stuff. But yeah, once our code is all grown up and ready to leave our laptop, what do we do?
Yeah, we got to get it to the cloud, so it's running in the cloud, talking to cloud resources, and talking to the database in the cloud. So let's.
So this is like pushing in this case, we're pushing everything up to the test/staging server, so that the QA team can have a look at it, getting ready to deploy to production, right?
And I mentioned when you get your app running to go to Cloud Run, there are two things you need to do. One is listen to for traffic on the port environment variable, and the other is you need to run your app as a container. So let's do that with something called a Docker file. I'll type this.
All right. Yeah, so Docker file is kind of a recipe that the build server will run through. It's step by step. It'll just run through a bunch of commands to build up the container. And the container will be the result of this process. It's kind of analogous to compiled code, if you will. Except a container, of course, as you may know, it contains all the right libraries as well. So it is a container is far easier to move between different environments than a piece of compiled code. So here we're pulling in node 12, a base image for node 12. We're going to use node version 12, and then its various commands here, culminating in npm start. Just like we ran npm start on our local machine, when the container is asked to run, it will run npm start, but up in the cloud. And so we could build this on our local machine, if we have Docker installed on our local machine. If we don't, or if we just want faster and more consistent builds, it's a good idea to use Google Cloud Build. So that's all. It's part of it's serverless build, and it's part of your GCP account. And you can run gcloud builds submit, and that takes this Docker file and the index and node packages and all that good stuff from your local machine, puts it in one giant tarball, and sends it up to the cloud. And then the build server has a whack at it and runs through this 6 steps here and creates a container and puts it in the container registry where we can have all our versioned built containers. So this is kind of like compiling your code in the cloud. We're not deploying the compiled thing.
Right,
yet.
it's not actually running. I think that's a good point. Took a little bit of time to upload because, again, working on home internet, then it can go a little bit slower.
Yeah.
And the first time we do this, that we build this container, it'll take a little bit longer than subsequent times because it needs to do everything from scratch. But on following builds, it will do some caching, at different layers if nothing has changed. So it doesn't necessarily have to start from the beginning. But so right now, yeah, so you see it just now got to step 3, 4. You can see these mirrored in the logs down here.
So Bret, how do you know what to write on which line of your Docker file?
So some of it is fairly self-explanatory. So things like working directory, this is where you want things to happen in the container. Copy takes certain files from your local directory where you're running the build and copies it to the working directory up here. So it's copying our package.json, and then it's running install to install those dependencies, npm install, and then it copies the rest of the files, so like your index.js and everything, and then it calls npm start, just like we've been doing this whole time locally to get it up and running. Yeah, and it looks like it's done.
Do you tweak this between apps?
Yeah, so the good news is for almost all of our Node apps, for example, we just use that exact file because it's pretty standard. We're not doing anything complicated and installing crazy libraries or anything like that. We just literally copy and paste.
So usually you don't even type it, you just copy paste it. Huh? Yeah. Excellent. Okay, so here we are in Cloud Run. So Cloud Run is Google's serverless way of running containers. So you don't have to define servers, but we will need to tell it what our endpoint is, and we need to tell it where to run it. So I see there you selected Iowa, right? Sort of our geographic average between
between
New
York and California and Mountain View. Yeah, probably Iowa's in the middle.
Okay.
We'll call it,
very good.
Goldfish API.
Very good. We gave it a name. We allow unauthenticated. We could lock it down as well. And here we need to pick the container. So as part of Goldfish, the Clever Goldfish account, they have a container registry. And there, all the containers of all the different versions are stored there. We only have one version, the one we just built. So yeah, let's deploy that container.
And then one. Okay.
And So and then these variables that we set by doing export db pass equals, for example, all those variables that we set on the Bret set in the local machine will now need to set those in the cloud, and we need to point those, of course, to the database in the cloud in our database. So that's in the same GCP account here. Also, you see here we're typing them in. For if you set all this up in a real production environment where you would have like CI/CD set up and all of that, you would probably set these environment variables with a script and use gcloud. What is it? gcloud run deploy.
Exactly.
Yep. At the command line. But it's a little easier to understand what's going on by doing it here in the UI. So choose whichever one works best for you.
And one thing I want to point out, that when you do a deploy, it will remember these values. So if you deploy again, you don't have to fill it out every time. It'll remember them from the previous time. Whether you're doing it in the UI or in the command line, it'll retain those values. So unless you need to change it.
That's a relief. I don't want to have to type that long DB host name every time.
And then one thing I do want to point out, we talked about identity. So when we were calling the translation API, we created the service account so that our user will run as that. In this case, we actually didn't set up permissions for talking to Cloud SQL. We should. Maybe we'll do that in a different video, kind of walking through how to do it properly. But you can set this, and we could say, this. I don't remember if it was Goldfish API, whichever one we set up. You can set what identity to run at as the cloud, so you only have the appropriate permissions.
So we're running at the default account there that has access to pretty much everything.
Yeah, which is great for development because you don't have to worry about tightening that up yet if you just kind of are trying to test your code and make sure, does my actual code work? But again, best practice would be to actually have it run as a specific service account, and then you would have to give the Cloud SQL permissions to that account.
Right.
All right.
So now it is taking the Oh my gosh, it was done already. I was hoping it would take some time so I could describe what's happening. It took the container, deployed it behind a specific URL. You see the URL there. It's an HTTPS URL. It's set up. There's a certificate and everything. So now we should be able to run all our endpoints in the cloud, right?
Let me increase the font a little bit.
Yeah.
Oops. Paste it in the URL. We tried the first one. So actually, let's try hello name equals Bret and Martin. And then
can you make that a bit bigger? Yeah, perfect. Okay, so this is the simple one. This is not hitting a database or anything. This one works. Great. Now let's see which one are we doing. Oh, the translate one. Hey, Falden.
All right. So hitting the translation API, and then
translation API works.
Moment of truth. Great. We'll do client/8, and
it's going slow. I'm not feeling good about this.
Let's go. We usually, take bets on what the odds are. Let's see. So in the Cloud Run UI, there was revisions, details. One of the options here is log, so it'll automatically pick these up. So let's see.
Did you set the connection to the database during deployment?
Oh, nope. That is exactly what it was. So now, again, I talked about permissions to get to the database, but then there's also connectivity. So just like my laptop can't see our Cloud SQL instance without running that little proxy on my laptop, same thing with Cloud Run. So you have to actually explicitly say, oh, I need to be able to talk to this database. Then when you do that, Cloud Run will set up a private connection between your app and the Cloud SQL database. Because again, it's by default, you can't see it.
Right. Yeah, the translation API, that's an open URL. Anybody can hit it from anywhere. But everybody has network connectivity to it. But the database is hidden by the network by default. All right,
let's refresh and see. Oh, whoops. Let's try this again. So clients/8. Aha!
Yeah, look at that.
Cool.
A sparkling new contract.
For Emerald contracts. Okay, well, awesome. That was super cool. Should we recap what we learned?
Yeah, let's talk about what we actually did here. There were a lot of moving parts. So we started out. Well, actually, we started out even without a cloud resource here with just. There it is. Yeah. So we started out with just running our local app on our local machine. We didn't hit any services anywhere, and we could set breakpoints, of course, when we do that. And next, what did we do, Bret?
Yep. So then we still wanted to run our app locally, so we could do breakpoints and debugging and all that, but we needed to talk to something in the cloud. So we learned about service accounts, which is a way to identify your application so that Google Cloud knows who you are and knows that your app has permissions to call, for example, the translation API. And then next.
Yeah. And then next one was if we need a database, pretty much every application has a database, we can run that locally on our local laptop if we so wish. But we can also
run it up in the cloud. Yeah. So we talked about how to still be running our app locally, to do debugging, all that good stuff, but have it talk to a database that lives in the cloud. So we learned that for Cloud SQL specifically, you need a little tool called Cloud SQL Proxy because your database by default is not accessible by anybody.
Right. And then when we're happy with our code, we run it on our laptops, set breakpoints, run through it, we're happy with it, and then it becomes time to push that code up into the cloud, deploy it. So now everything is in the cloud. And this is what your production environment would look like, or your test or your staging environment in the cloud would look like.
Cool. Well, that was awesome. I had a great time. If anyone watching has any questions about what we built, thoughts, suggestions, or if you have ideas for other things you'd like to see us build, Martin, how can they let us know?
Yes. Then add comments below, YouTube comments. We read them all, and we try to respond to them all. And actually, most of our videos, including this one, was from you viewers asking us to create to show how this is done.
All right, awesome. Well, I think I might head out and call my internet provider and see about maybe getting an upgrade.
Right. Don't we all? Yes. Very good. Thank you very much, Bret. See
All
you
right.
next time,
All right.
everybody.
See you.